everybody. It is Momma Mondays. Happy, healthy, and whole. That is my goal. Keeping our minds and bodies uplifted to create healthy attitudes. At Kombucha Camp, we do that with kindness, ambition, mindfulness, positivity, equanimity, and respect. Respect. 新年快乐！恭喜发财！康普茶拿来！红色的，很幸福的。Delicious， 好好喝咯！欢迎光临，欢迎光临 ！Welcome everybody， 大家好。So I'm so excited. It is Chinese New Year, the year of the water tiger, 水老虎. And I'm so excited to be celebrating. I love New Year's because there are so many throughout the year. So we consistently get a new opportunity to plant new seeds with the new moon in Aquarius right now. And just to be grateful. We get an opportunity to be grateful for all that we have in our lives, all the abundance, all the beauty. Yes, I know the world is crazy and chaotic, but the more we focus on beauty, the beauty of nature, the beauty of cycles, the beauty of fermentation, the more we are able to raise our vibe. And I am so excited to welcome our special guest today here on Momma Mondays, Sandor Katz. You know him, we love him. And we are so excited to have him here today. Hi, Sandor. Welcome. So glad to have you here today.
So great to see you, Hannah. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I love that you're coming to us live from your mustard yellow kitchen. It's really great to see you. Well, you're home, which is exciting because you obviously journeyed quite a bit for this book. And for folks who don't know you, just give us a quick intro. Who are you? Who is the amazing Sandor Katz?
Okay, well, I like to call myself a fermentation revivalist, and I've written several books about fermented foods and beverages, how to ferment them yourselves, and you know, I love fermenting, and you know, basically, since my first book, Wild Fermentation came out, which is 19 years ago now. You know, what began as a book tour for this book kind of has, you know, evolved into a lifestyle as an itinerant fermentation educator. And, you know, I mean, certainly, you know, the last 2 years I've been at home more than I have, you know, any time, you know, over the last 19 years. You know, I've had the good fortune to be invited, you know, really like all across North America and many other places. I've taught in maybe 25 countries at this point. You know, in my travels, of course, I'm not only teaching, but I'm learning, I'm eating, I'm drinking. So, you know, I've just had the good opportunity to be exposed to lots of different kinds of fermented foods and beverages, and you know, a lot of my hosts have shared my passion for fermentation and, you know, taken me on, you know, wonderful adventures to, you know, sort of learn about different kinds of foods and beverages. So, you know, my repertoire has certainly expanded through the years, and you know, I've had in mind for you know, for quite some time that eventually I would write a book like this, but, you know, I was too busy running around and teaching. And, you know, in 2020, I was supposed to be, you know, teaching in Peru, and I had a trip planned to Taiwan and to Yukon in the northwest of Canada. And so, you know, I just had all these places I was going to go and learn more about. But then when all my plans, like everybody else's plans, got canceled, I had time on my hands. So, you know, I spent my time writing this book about places that I've traveled to and foods and beverages that I've learned about. And, you know, this is a how-to book, just like all of my books are. They're just, you know, but primarily practical information about how to make different kinds of foods and beverages. You know, the realm of fermentation is, you know, is vast and quite nearly infinite. And, everybody has their gateway. My gateway is sauerkraut. I continue to be extremely devoted to sauerkraut. Obviously many people's gateway is kombucha. But it doesn't matter what your gateway is. It's always good to expand your, expand your palate, expand your experience, expand your microbiome. The realm of fermentation is just it's just a vast area of human cultural experience. And, people ferment, anything we could possibly eat can be fermented. Fermentation is practiced in every part of the world and in, quite nearly infinite variety. So, even having devoted myself for the last, 30 years to learning about fermentation, I'm always learning about new things and meeting people who, just tried something I never even thought of.
Well, this is so exciting. These are the blessings, the silver linings of the pandemic, right? Is the opportunity for us to go within, to digest, to ferment on all of the great experiences we've had, and how wonderful that you've been able to produce yet another volume of incredible stories, as you said, wrapping all of this great information. And, just to back up a little bit, so you've been fermenting for 30 years. Wild fermentation has been about for almost 20 years. So that means there was like 10 years of you sort of learning fermentation and getting excited about it. What led you? Well, obviously sauerkraut was your gateway in, but was it eating it at German stores, or how did you get into sauerkraut to begin with, Sandor?
Well, I would say that, like my first fermentation love was pickles. And, I grew up in New York City. My grandparents were immigrants from what's now Belarus. I just loved pickles, and the pickles that we were eating in my family are not the vinegary pickles that, populate supermarket shelves, but, they were what in New York we call sour pickles, and outside of New York, I see them referred to as kosher dills. But, they're basically, cucumbers. I mean, I didn't know this as a kid. I just knew how good they tasted and I loved them. But, they're basically, cucumbers in a saltwater brine solution with lots of garlic, dill, sometimes other seasonings, and then fermented. And then the flavor is lactic acid. That's what preserves them, rather than acetic acid of vinegar. And it's just a different flavor. I didn't know anything about how they were made. It's not like my grandmother was making them or anything like that. We were buying them, at a delicatessen. But I loved them, and I got a reputation in my family, like, oh, if the pickles are all gone, guess who ate them again?
I was hoping too.
So,
the vinegar ones.
My introduction to fermentation was just through, a love of a flavor of fermentation. And of course, sauerkraut was also part of my childhood. Not so much in a German store, but, at least, I don't know if this is as true today, but back in the time when I was growing up, there were like these hot dog carts on, not every corner, but, you couldn't walk 4 blocks without seeing a hot dog cart. They were everywhere. And, always the hot dog was available with sauerkraut. And so, I loved sauerkraut primarily in that context, like on a hot dog on the street. But that wasn't, that was just, among the million foods that I love to eat. I would say that I really started tuning into fermentation more when I was in my mid-20s. I spent a couple of years following a macrobiotic diet. So I was experimenting with diet and different kinds of dietary ideologies. And, macrobiotics really places a great emphasis on the digestive benefit of pickles and sauerkraut and other kinds of live ferments. And, I just started noticing that these pickles that I've been eating my entire life, whenever I would eat them, I could feel the salivary glands under my tongue squirting out saliva. And I really began to associate these foods with, getting my digestive juices flowing, really in a literal way. And so, I started eating them with some regularity, really as a health practice. And, and I've really been eating sauerkraut and pickles, regularly as a health practice ever since. Although, it's not like the kind of health practice that like you have to suffer for, because I really love I love the flavor. So it's no punishment at all for me to, have a little side of sauerkraut with whatever I'm eating. This morning, I had some eggs and I had some sauerkraut with my eggs. I have sauerkraut with virtually anything. But what really, the catalyst for me figuring out how to make them myself is that in 1993, so 29 years ago, I moved from New York, where I was born and raised, to rural Tennessee. And, among the many changes in my life at that time, I started gardening. That was part of, the impetus for moving to Tennessee, was wanting to like live closer to the land, wanting to become more intimate with plants, wanting to, have a garden, wanting to, eat fresh produce right out of the garden. So that first season that I was gardening, well, first of all, I was such a naive city kid. I'd really never thought about the idea that in a garden, all of the cabbage would be ready at about the same time, or all the radishes would be ready at about the same time. So, when I encountered that for the first time, my first thought was like, oh, sauerkraut. Like, I know I love sauerkraut, and I know that sauerkraut has something to do with preserving cabbages, but I just assumed you'd poured vinegar over the cabbages. I just wasn't really thinking very deeply about it. I looked in, the most common cookbook found in kitchens in the United States, The Joy of Cooking. And, I found a sauerkraut recipe in The Joy of Cooking, and I followed it. And the sauerkraut was incredibly delicious. The process was extremely straightforward. And then I just started playing, because I'm a little bit, it's hard for me to just follow a recipe and end with that. Like, I'm always tinkering. More likely, I'll like consult 3 or 4 recipes and then do some kind of a, meld of them. But anyway, I just started playing around. Well, what happens if I add some carrot to that? The recipe didn't say carrot. Does it work the same way? What if I don't put any cabbage in at all? What if I just do turnips? I just started playing around with it. And then I also started making other things. I started making yogurt. I actually, got the book of miso and got a hold of some koji, and I learned how to make miso. I made some wine. I made some elderberry wine. So, I just started exploring other realms of fermentation. And then, before long, I was like just down the rabbit hole of fermentation and, trying different things, plowing through, cookbooks about cuisines from different parts of the world, trying to learn about ferments of different traditions. A friend of mine gave me a kombucha mother. That was before there even existed any commercial kombucha. And, I played around with making kombucha. I got some kefir grains and learned how to make kefir. So, it was really just like a personal obsession. And, I shared with my friends / inflicted on my friends. And I got a little reputation. A friend of mine nicknamed me Sandor Katz. I got invited to teach a workshop. That was really significant. In 1998, my friends at the Sequatchie Valley Institute, which is about an hour from here, were organizing a food skill share event. And they invited me to teach a sauerkraut making workshop. And, that was kind of profound because, I had never felt anxious about it. Like, it was a familiar food to me. Joy of Cooking said you could do it. I never really felt anxious about it. But at that first workshop, I had a student stare at the jar and say, how can I be sure I have good bacteria growing in my jar of shredded cabbage and, not some dangerous bacteria that might make me sick or even kill somebody? And, thus began, me learning that, it's very easy for people who've been told all their lives how dangerous bacteria are to project that anxiety onto the idea of fermentation. And so, really, in order to be able to answer that question, I had to do some reading. And, I started doing more research about fermentation. And I learned that, fermentation, more than anything, is a strategy for safety. And it turns out that with a food like sauerkraut, like according to the USDA, there are no documented cases of food poisoning or illness stemming from sauerkraut or fermented vegetables. And, there's not many foods you could say that about. And, it means that the process of fermentation makes the vegetables safer than they are raw.
Yes.
But that started me reading, and that became an annual event. And I really looked forward to teaching at this annual event. But in 2001, I had a conflict, and I couldn't make it. And so I felt so sad about that I spent a month writing all my little recipes. And this is the first iteration of Wild Fermentation. It's called A Do-It-Yourself Guide to Cultural Manipulation. But as soon as I wrote that, I realized, like, wow, okay, I have a lot to say about this, and I have a lot to learn about this. And so, I decided to like try to figure out how to turn this into a book. I found a publisher, Chelsea Green, my wonderful publisher that I've been with ever since. And I turned it into a full-length book, and then I organized a cross-country book tour. And honestly, by the time I got home from my book tour, I was getting emails saying, could you come to our conference and make a presentation? And so, my life kind of became a book tour. And, that book tour, only took a break due to COVID, but really has never ended.